Greetings. Uh, in this presentation, we're going to look at how you can use art as a primary document in order to understand a historic event. In this case, we're doing it about Yorktown, but it could actually apply in a world history class and an American history class. Uh, we're looking at old paintings as primary documents as a source of historic information. Start out with a couple facts. Wikipedia actually has a list that shows the names of the 89, quote, ships of the line, the big ships, the ones with, 50 to 70 cannons, between 1755 and 1785. Like HMS Victoria, a first-rate ship. It had 3 decks, 104 guns, and it's really important to note, a crew of 850 people, because each of those guns is going to require a handful of people in order to load it and run it out. So here's an old painting, shows a battle in Chesapeake Bay between British and French naval forces in 1781. This battle was absolutely a key to what we call Washington's victory at Yorktown. If the French had not been able to keep the British bottled up here, Yorktown would have been resupplied, and it would have been a completely different story. You can view a list of British naval battles at this website here. What we did was to say, copyright laws don't let us reproduce the stories and the lists from that website, but we can show you some paintings that were made over time. Because making and selling paintings of battle turns out to have been a really important job back then. This is before cameras and video were invented. So here's Francis Holman's painting of Cape St. Vincent. Thomas Looney did a painting of the Dogger Bank where the British Navy fought against the Dutch. Louisbourg, a painting near Nova Scotia. Grenada in the Caribbean. Saints near Jamaica. This one's particularly interesting because here's another painting of that battle. Here's a third painting of that battle. And the fact that the weather is different in those paintings and the ships look different and so on is a really important fact about old paintings. None of the painters were actually eyewitnesses to the battles that they were showing. They were kind of like your local weather forecaster taking the national forecast and recasting it. So here's Richard Peton's painting of Cape Spartel near Morocco. And here's a painting of the Siege of Gibraltar. And if you look very carefully, there's a handful of ships over there attacking the port. Is his Frigate Bay by Nicholas Bocard. At Porto Praya, Trincomalee. Now, I just showed you a whole bunch of paintings, and if that's all we were going to do, you'd forget every one of them in a little while. It would help to put their locations on the world map. This will help us estimate the total number of ships defending British colonies in 1781, the year of Chesapeake. Just to defend the homeland, Admiral Hardy had 35 ships. About half of them were ships of the line because the French were massing an army and thinking about invading the southern part of England. Meanwhile, there was a battle going on all through 1781, and Elliot had 12 ships to help defend Gibraltar. There were 4 battles fought, and Admiral Hughes, had 12 ships fighting battles like Trincomalee off of India. In April of that year, there was a battle in the Caribbean with Admiral Hood and a battle off the coast of Africa. In July of that year, there was a battle up near Louisbourg. You've seen these paintings already here. Chesapeake happened with 19 ships, half of them were ships of the line, in September of that year. Admiral Rodney had 15 ships down near St. Eustatius, and Kempenfeld was fighting a battle in the Bay of Biscay with 12 ships. You add that up for a little while like this. And we shouldn't forget that Britain had many ships engaged in slave trading in the 1780s. This painting is about the slave ship revolt that happened in 1781. And Captain Cook had a handful of ships out in the Pacific Ocean doing just exploration in 1781. The historic fact, the important historic fact, is that the British Navy, slave traders, and explorers were active in many places around the world in 1781. This required a lot of ships and sailors because these ships don't go very fast. They can't get from one place to another. A simple question: does this peek at British naval history make it easy to understand why impressing of sailors was such a big deal in the Declaration of Independence? The messy question: were the American colonists really standing up against the entire might of the British Empire? Or was the British Navy overextended and therefore unable to send enough ships to break the French blockade in Chesapeake? And the answer, of course, uh, well, the half of the answers came from these old paintings as primary sources to help us understand the past. But to check that, we ought to look at other primary sources, letters and things like that. And an extremely useful source is a letter by John Montagu, who was the first Lord of the British Admiralty, writing to Admiral Howe, the commander of the North American station, in the 1778, saying, the object of this war has changed, and the contest in America is a secondary consideration. Our principal object must be distressing France and defending His Majesty's possessions around the world. Basically, Montagu was telling how America's just not that important. We need ships in Gibraltar and the Caribbean and Louisburg and Dogger Bank and Port au Prince and over in India. So you're just going to have to make do with the fleet you already have, even though the French fleet that you're facing has got more ships and guns. Do the best you can. This presentation and several supporting activities can be downloaded from the Giants website. And like we say, it would fit in an American history class. It helps put the American Revolution into a global perspective, which is a pretty useful thing to do with any war at any time. Does Gaza or Ukraine come to mind at the moment? Thank you.